Okay, so have you ever like noticed that thing where you try to hold on to water really tightly, and the more you squeeze, the faster it like slips through your fingers?
Right?
It's almost like a mini lesson in like the futility of trying to control something
Oh, yeah.
that's so fluid and ever changing, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
And that feeling, that kind of grasping, that's like a glimpse into how the ego works.
Yeah.
Always craving validation, needing to be right, creating all this like unnecessary inner turmoil.
Yeah. Yeah. And that turmoil, it spills out into our lives too,
Yeah,
right?
it totally does. Yeah,
Relationships, work, you name it.
absolutely. But what if there was like a different way?
Okay.
A way to navigate the world where true strength isn't about that tight grip, but about
Hmm.
understanding how to let go.
Interesting.
So that's what we're diving into today.
I like it.
The wisdom of Lord Shiva. And not just as like, a deity to be worshipped,
Right, right.
but as this like potent symbol of transformation. Who offers these like timeless insights into moving beyond ego?
I'm intrigued. You know, one thing that really struck me going through these sources you've gathered is how
Yeah,
they don't get bogged down in like the purely mythological aspects.
right.
It's about extracting practical wisdom from all that rich symbolism.
Exactly, yeah.
It's like, how do we apply these ancient teachings to our modern struggles with ego and control
Absolutely.
and that relentless pursuit of a certain kind of success? It's like we've lost sight of what real success is.
Right.
And this deep dive, it's like a framework for inner resilience.
It really is, yeah. So for you, the listener, think of this as your distilled guide. Like, we've explored all these ideas so you don't have to. And we're bringing you the core principles, not as some boring lecture,
Right.
but like as a conversation, between us two
I like it.
about how to quiet that inner critic that's always like,
Oh, yeah.
comparing, judging, and demanding.
That voice never shuts up, does it?
Never. So how can this ancient wisdom offer solutions for a more fulfilling life?
I think that's the key, isn't it? You know, one thing that's so cool is how the sources we're looking at,
Yeah.
they interpret even the most like intense parts of Shiva's imagery, like that fierce gaze, the third eye, even his detachment from material things.
Right.
It's all potent metaphors for understanding and ultimately transcending the ego.
Oh, totally. And like redefining what success really means.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. The nature of the ego and this idea of its destruction.
Okay, yeah.
The sources describe ego as like this false sense of control,
Mm-hmm.
this inner narrative that's always seeking approval, and it's like the
Yeah.
root of so much suffering.
Right, because it's never satisfied, is it?
No, never.
It's always wanting more, always needing to prove itself, always on the defensive.
And it just creates the cycle,
Absolutely, yeah.
of endless wanting and never really being content.
It's exhausting, honestly.
It is, yeah.
You know, it's interesting. The texts are very clear that when they talk about Shiva's destruction,
Mm-hmm.
it's not about literal annihilation.
All right. Yeah.
It's about dissolving the illusions that the ego constructs.
Interesting.
Like, think about that powerful imagery, that third eye.
Yeah.
It symbolizes this piercing insight that can see through those false narratives.
It's almost like the
Okay.
ego is like the ultimate illusionist, right?
I like that, yeah.
It makes us think we're in control when really we're often just reacting to its demands.
Absolutely. We're puppets to our own ego, in a way.
And it's amazing how this aligns with modern psychology, too. Like,
Right.
we recognize the ego as a part of our identity, but also see how it limits us.
Right. It creates so much anxiety, fuels comparisons with others,
Yeah.
and ultimately prevents us from connecting.
Right. From like genuine connection with ourselves and with the world.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the sources talk about Shiva's Trishul, the trident, as a symbol in this process.
Oh, interesting.
So it's not just a weapon, right?
Right.
But it represents mastery over the forces that energize the ego,
Okay.
our desires, our fears, and our attachments.
So by understanding and controlling those, we can loosen the ego's grip.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I see.
And move towards greater inner clarity and peace.
That makes sense. So we're starting to see the nature of the ego, right?
Right.
But then comes this idea of letting go and embracing change,
Mm-hmm.
symbolized by Shiva's dance, the Tandava.
Yeah. Can you unpack that a little for us?
Okay, so the Tandava, it's this vibrant dance of creation and destruction.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a metaphor for the cyclical rhythm of life itself.
Okay.
And the sources really emphasize that growth, real success, requires us to let go
Let go of what?
of anything that no longer serves us. You know? old relationships, past achievements that we cling to,
Right.
even expectations about how the future should be.
Which feels kind of counterintuitive in today's world, doesn't it?
It totally does.
We're so obsessed with outcomes.
Right. Hitting financial targets, climbing the career ladder, getting that validation.
Yeah, and the sources suggest that this attachment to outcomes is a major source of suffering.
It is, because we're constantly striving, never really arriving.
Right. Always reaching for the next thing.
And that's where the wisdom comes in, right?
Okay.
Cultivating detachment from those rigid expectations and learning to be present.
So it's not about being passive,
No, not at all.
but it's more about acting with intention but releasing the fear of a specific result, right? Like focusing on the journey, not just the destination.
Exactly, yeah.
It's like that phoenix effect the sources talk about, right?
Oh, yeah.
This idea that destruction or letting go is essential for renewal.
Totally.
We can't grow if we're clinging to the past.
To old habits, outdated beliefs, anything that's holding us back.
Right, and sometimes things need to fall apart to make way for something new.
And that's okay. It's part of the process.
Not something to be afraid of.
Right. It's an opportunity for something better.
Yeah. And the sources see our past failures not as dead ends, but as stepping stones.
Yeah, they make us stronger.
And sometimes reinvention is necessary, right?
Absolutely. It's how we adapt and evolve.
And that willingness to let go is key to resilience and fulfillment.
Definitely. Yeah.
Now, another really interesting point is about the illusion of material success.
Okay.
Like the image of Shiva as this renunciate on Mount Kailash, detached from possessions.
Right.
It sends a pretty powerful message, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. The sources interpret that as a symbol that external things, wealth, titles, possessions, they don't define true success.
It's more about inner peace.
Exactly.
Which isn't to say we should all abandon everything and live in a cave.
No, not necessarily.
But it's about reframing our relationship with wealth.
Viewing it as a tool, not our identity.
Right, because true happiness comes from within.
It does. It's an inside job.
And the sources encourage a shift from chasing wealth to creating impact.
Oh, that's good, yeah.
And cultivating gratitude, like real abundance is about needing less.
I like that, yeah. Because the ego is always hungry for more.
Always.
But gratitude helps us appreciate what we have.
Absolutely.
And that breaks the cycle of wanting.
Now let's talk about that third eye, that striking image.
Yeah.
The sources explain it as this ability to see beyond ordinary perception.
To tap into inner wisdom beyond logic and reason.
And by quieting the ego's chatter,
Mm-hmm.
we can access this deeper knowing, leading to clarity, intuition, and peace.
That's the key, isn't it? Quieting the mind so we can actually hear our intuition.
Yeah, because it's always there, but it gets drowned out.
Exactly, yeah.
And the sources highlight meditation as a way to silence the ego,
That makes sense.
to create that space for stillness and insight.
Right, because when the mind is still, that's when the real wisdom can emerge.
And they also mention chanting Om Namah Shivaya,
Oh, interesting.
not just as a religious ritual, but as a tool for personal awakening.
Well, way to break free from those ego-driven thought patterns. You know, it's fascinating how they connect Shiva's meditative state to our modern struggle with focus,
Oh,
right?
totally, with all the distractions we face.
Yeah, it's like finding inner stillness is a superpower these days.
It really is, and true power is about mastering the mind.
Absolutely.
And one practical tip they offer is starting the day with mindfulness
Okay, yeah.
to set the tone before the external pressures take over.
That's a great idea, yeah.
So we're essentially taking charge of our mental state before the world does.
I like that, yeah.
Okay, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about the Arhanarishwara form.
Okay.
This depiction of Shiva as half male and half female.
Right, a powerful symbol.
So what's the key takeaway for us in terms of moving beyond ego?
Well, the Arhanarishwara embodies the balance between masculine and feminine energies.
Okay.
And the sources emphasize that true success isn't about dominance or one perspective.
It's more about unity and understanding.
Exactly, yeah.
So it's moving away from the need to be in control or always be right.
Right, and embracing collaboration, empathy, valuing different viewpoints.
Because wisdom unites while ego divides.
It does, yeah. And compassion is a sign of strength, not weakness.
Absolutely. It's about leading with empathy and prioritizing understanding.
I like that, yeah.
Now let's move on to the story of Shiva drinking the hala hala poison.
Okay.
The sources use it as a metaphor for facing challenges.
It's a pretty powerful image, right?
It is, yeah. He drinks this deadly poison to save the universe.
Showing us how to face adversity with courage, without fear.
Because the ego wants to avoid discomfort at all costs.
Right. It shies away from challenges, from the possibility of failure.
But true strength comes from embracing those difficulties.
Absolutely, seeing them as opportunities for growth.
So instead of asking, why me, when things go wrong, we should ask, what is this teaching me?
That's a powerful shift in perspective.
And it's about cultivating that warrior mindset where resilience is key.
You know, the sources really highlight that challenges are inevitable.
They are, yeah.
But they're not meant to break us. They're meant to make us stronger.
And by facing them head on, we develop inner strength.
Right. We learn and we grow.
Okay, let's dive a bit deeper into this concept of detachment.
Okay.
The sources repeatedly emphasize that obsession leads to suffering.
Whether it's obsession with success, power, or even relationships.
Right, because the ego thrives on those attachments.
It does. It clings to them, and that creates suffering.
And Shiva's wisdom guides us towards a sense of flow.
Allowing things to come and go without that tight grip.
Letting go of the need to control every outcome.
Trusting the process of life.
And that surrender, that's not weakness, it's ultimate strength.
It is, yeah. It's about recognizing when we're too attached to something and consciously choosing to loosen that grip.
And release those unhealthy attachments that are causing us pain.
To people, to old versions of ourselves, to limiting beliefs.
Because there's freedom in letting go.
There is. Yeah.
Okay, so pulling all this together, how do the sources redefine true success?
Well, they shift the focus from external markers to something much deeper.
It's about alignment with our true selves.
Yes, and contributing to a positive legacy, cultivating inner peace.
So it's less about what we achieve and more about who we become.
Exactly, yeah.
And they give examples of visionaries who prioritized purpose over ego.
Right, people who followed their inner calling without needing external validation.
And that's a more fulfilling path.
It is, yeah.
So for our listeners, what are some actionable steps to integrate this wisdom?
Well, the sources suggest practicing detachment in everyday life.
Okay.
Cultivating mindfulness through meditation. Engaging in acts of kindness.
Right, so shifting our focus outward.
Yeah, and using meditation and mantras to quiet the ego.
And the core message is that true power lies in surrender.
It does, yeah. By transcending the ego, we discover our true selves.
And that's what this deep dive has been all about, right?
It is, yeah. Exploring Shiva's wisdom for modern success.
Moving beyond ego to find true fulfillment.
And it's been a fascinating conversation.
It has. So let's wrap up with a quick recap of the key principles.
Okay.
We talked about dissolving the ego's illusions to gain clarity.
Right.
Embracing change by letting go. Understanding that material possessions don't bring true happiness. Cultivating self-mastery through mindfulness. Practicing compassion and balance.
And facing challenges with courage and resilience.
And the liberating power of detachment.
It's a lot to take in, isn't it?
It is, but it's all about taking those small steps.
One day at a time.
Now, for you, the listener, here's something to ponder.
Okay.
As we explored these aspects of ego through Shiva's wisdom, what specific belief or attachment within yourself might be holding you back from greater fulfillment or a different kind of success?
That's a great question to reflect on.
It is, and it's worth revisiting these concepts, diving deeper.
Absolutely.
This isn't a quick fix, it's a journey.
A journey towards understanding and transcending the ego.
And ultimately towards a more authentic and fulfilling life. So keep exploring, keep reflecting, and keep letting go.
And maybe, just maybe, you'll discover that true power lies in surrender.
That's a great note to end on.
It is, yeah.